Hello everybody and welcome. It is lovely to see you, lovely to have you. Thank you for coming, thanks for being here. Today is the end, this is the end. My only friend, the end. I promise it's not going to be the last time I sing today, let's be honest. I'll try and make it the last time, but I can't promise anything. Let's crank the lights up a bit. It's the end of the series. Oh no, don't cry everybody. It's the end of the series, the end of series 2 beyond the SDGs. We're talking mostly about SDG16. SDG17 is of course partnerships for goals, so always go out there and look for people to partner with and ways to achieve these goals. But today we'll be looking at SDG16. Before we continue, for the last time, of course, if you would like to donate, feel free. Yes, there is a broken picture frame behind me. I can see you all saying, what? It's being used in a photo exhibition that my amazing wife, Gemma Galan, is doing, or Gemma de Rocio, you can find her on Instagram. You can find us here on YouTube. Told you it wouldn't be the last time I sang. Or, of course, you can find us on Facebook and also on Instagram. I also tweet quite a lot, but all views are my own. Anyway, most of my views are my own anyway. Let's have a look at this week's quote. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. The legendary Jimi Hendrix said that. How do you feel about that quote? Do you agree? Hello there, Partap. How are you? I hope you're well. Thank you so much for joining us. An absolute pleasure to have you here. Do you agree with this? I mean, there were a few that I could have chosen. The famous Martin Luther King, that love will conquer hate, that light will conquer dark, was one of them. But this one for me felt most apt, because the love of power and the love of money is something that it doesn't seem we're getting particularly far past at the moment. So I thought this was quite appropriate. The worksheet is there in the chat, so if you want to use that, it's there, right? That's where the chat box is, I think, somewhere around there. I'm going to go up higher. I think it's about there, right at the top. It's up there, so if you want the worksheet, feel free, help yourself. And you can write on the worksheet or in the chat what you think about this. And continuing, let's have a look at the vocabulary for today. Now, it's not the nicest vocabulary in the world. Hello there, fun with art. Naveen from India, lovely to see you. Lovely to have you here. One of Ritik's students, I imagine, the wonderful Ritik. Probably the best teacher in the world, I'd have to say. Hello there, Praveen Kumar as well. I called you Partap, I apologise. Yeah, Praveen. There we go, and there's Ritik himself. The legend is here. So some of the things we're going to be looking at. Now, to end this series, I was hoping for something a bit more positive. Thinking of peace and justice. These incredible things that we don't seem to have enough of in the world at the moment. Good evening, Ritik. An absolute pleasure to see you again. And when I was looking into this, when I was researching this, I was really hoping this would be a really positive end to the series. But don't worry, Series 3 is going to be super positive from start to finish. Sadly, so last year when we ended the series, I shaved my head. And it was all about celebrations. This one, I'd hoped that peace would be a great way to end things, but sadly, we're not really experiencing peace in the way that we might hope at the moment in our lives. So I'm just going to change the size of the screen a bit there so we can see these. So a hate crime. We will talk about these. It's a crime, typically one involving violence that is motivated by prejudice on the basis of race, religion, sexual orientation, etc. Something that happens far too often. We're going to see some very horrible stats very soon about this, but that is what a hate crime is. So when we start talking about them, you know what they are. The next one is intolerance. Unwillingness to accept views, beliefs, or behaviour that differ from one's own. Now, I know that everybody in here is very tolerant, and we believe that we need to wipe out intolerance in the world. And that is something I've been working hard to improve my knowledge on as well, to how to increase tolerance across all boundaries. I've been working a lot with inclusive teaching practices, and I'm hoping that I can improve on that as the time goes on. Now, exploitation is the act or fact of treating someone unfairly in order to benefit from their work. You often talk about child exploitation, when children are used to work when they shouldn't. Also, all sorts of exploitation. We're going to look a bit closer at that very soon. And the last one's a lot more positive. Inclusive societies. An inclusive society is a society that overrides differences of race, gender, class, generation, and geography, and ensures inclusion, equality of opportunity, as well as, there were more things there, but I didn't have space. So it's an equality of opportunity for everybody, and a lack of intolerance, and a distinct lack of hate crimes. As you can see, inclusive societies, they reflect the opposite of what is a hate crime. So what are we talking about today? Today we're talking about SDG16. We're mentioning 17 as well, but we're focusing on SDG16. And it is to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, inclusive institutions at all levels. Now, this is one of the areas that is apparently doing the best out of all of the SDGs, making the most progress. Peaceful and inclusive societies. I'm trying to find where we're improving on that. I know that here in Spain the elections are coming up, and one of the favourites to gain seats are called Vox, and they are a far right party who, I watched one of their talks the other day, and they were talking about only having natural family and natural family, if there is such a thing, and no to LGBTQ rights. And it made me so mad watching it, and it made me realise we aren't getting close enough to an inclusive society. Access to justice for all. Does everybody have fair access to justice? I don't think so. Justice very much depends on who you are, where you're from, and how much money you have. Build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Let's have a look at governments. Let's look at the British government, for example. Is that inclusive? I don't think so. So let's look a bit more closely at the targets here. I'll let you have a look there. I'll let you go through those. I won't read all of them. But it's talking about reducing violence everywhere. Reduce violence everywhere. A very generic idea. Protect children from abuse, exploitation, trafficking, and violence. I mean, I think we should protect everybody from those things. Promote the rule of law. Combat organised crime, illicit financial and arms flows. Now, I would like to know if we could just combat arms flows, because you can see the United Kingdom continue to supply Saudi Arabia with arms, which they use against the Yemen. But that's not illicit apparently, so that's okay. It's not okay. War is not okay. Reduce corruption and bribery. Nice. We're asking governments to reduce corruption and bribery, those who deal with it the most. Ensure responsive, inclusive, and representative decision making. Gerrymandering, which changes voting regions, and voter fraud, and and elected officials only doing what their donors say and not what their constituents say. We're going to talk a little bit more about this very shortly. But now we're going to move on to the unfun facts. I'm trying to calm myself down. I see that this subject makes me rather angry because I believe that peace is something we need, but I don't believe that peace is something our governments want. I wish they did. I'm going to turn the fan off because I think that it's making the sound a bit interesting. If I start sweating, I apologise. There we go, I'm back again. Here we go, so unfun facts. Here we go. The first ones. Hate crimes increased in the USA by 44% in 2021. So there, remember, crimes based on race, religion, gender, sexuality. Race were the predominant ones with 61%. But the sad thing is, so while they increased in 2021 by 44%, they also increased in 2020 by 36%. So they went up by 36% from 2019 to 2020, and then a further 44% the next year. I can't get my head around it. One thing that is positive, homicide rates are falling in the EU. However, this is a disproportionate fact because only 5.8% of global deaths are caused by homicide. However, in sub-Saharan Africa, it's around 36%. So we don't really have... It depends where you are. Mass shootings in the US continue to rise. Now, this is what I was talking about before with donors. So we've got a very horrible statistic here, a horrible graph, where you can see the mass shootings that have occurred in the first 5 months of the year, the number of mass shootings there have been. So there hasn't been a week gone by in this year so far where there hasn't been a mass shooting in the US. If we wanted peace and justice, then there would be a change to the gun laws. It's not difficult, but this is where we are talking about politicians and governments being ruled by their donors, because there are senators, there are 50 people in the United States that are saying, no, we don't want to change gun laws. It's our Second Amendment right. As if a rule that was made 200 and something years ago is relevant to today. Because do you know what? In the Constitution, the American Constitution, they didn't mention seatbelts, did they? But you have to use them now. Things change. Times change. Gun laws in the United States need to change. It's just a fact. And then the last one here, Boris Johnson is the first UK Prime Minister to have officially been found to have broken the law whilst in office. He was found, he's been fined for having a party during lockdown. He was caught red-handed, but he continues to rule the country. So now let's go with our true or false questions. Make sure you've got all of these in your mind, and then we'll go to true or false. So, number 1. Hate crimes are falling. What do you think? Are hate crimes falling? Is it true or is it false? What do you think? Put it in the chat box. What do you think? Go put it in the chat box. Wow, it's really warm in here. I'm going to put the blind down a little more. Hate crimes are falling. Hate crimes are falling. They are not. It is absolutely false. Mass shootings in the US are decreasing, not is decreasing, Harry. Wow. Are they decreasing in the US? What do you think? You can put it in the chat box. They are not falling. Why are they not falling? Because the laws on guns in the US are terrible. And finally, absolutely, Ritik, I see there you've got false. Well done. Boris Johnson is a great example for the people he is supposed to be leading. Now, this one is rather subjective, although I think it's quite easy to see. Somebody who breaks the law, are they a good leader? A law that they set, okay? So I think you need to, what we now say nowadays is walk the talk. Boris Johnson does not. So again, this one is absolutely 100% false. He is not a good example. He is a terrible example and a terrible human being. Very good, Ritik. Ritik's in there with the falses. Today, all three were false. Now, one small step today is all about just doing one small thing to try and make peace. Maybe it can be in your area. Maybe it can be in your school. Who knows? It's completely up to you. Now, signing petitions is another way, or donating money to a peace charity. So here are our questions for the video. Or here are the different options. Have a watch. We'll put the video on twice, don't you worry. If you need to take a screenshot or if you're not sure, we'll put these up again afterwards. The video is 3 minutes long. I'm going to put it on now. We'll watch it twice and then we'll continue with the rest of the lesson.
Violence and injustice are inherently unsustainable aspects of society.
Actually, I've changed my mind. We'll watch it once. If you need to watch it back again, you can zoom back and check it again. But I don't want to make you all sit there for 6 minutes, so we will only watch it once today.
Violence and injustice are inherently unsustainable aspects of society. The world cannot completely and effectively use its resources while inequality still exists. And so, the United Nations poses with Sustainable Development Goal 16 a series of issues of justice and inequality that must be addressed if we want to fully realize a sustainable and peaceful world. In precise words, SDG16 aims to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. The first step to building peaceful societies is to reduce violence and violence-related death rates worldwide. The global homicide rate has been on a slow decline from 6.8% of deaths in 2000 to 5.8% of deaths in 2018. But this number can vary wildly by region, like in sub-Saharan Africa, where the homicide rate is 36%. Putting an end to all forms of trafficking, to include human trafficking and prostitution, illegal arms dealing, money laundering, and other such illicit affairs associated with organized crime, all of which contribute to a severely violent society, should be a top priority. Violence against children is also of particular importance, since children who witness or are subject to abusive behaviors while young are more likely to repeat the behaviors as adults. In a survey of primarily low and middle income countries from 2012 to 2019, 8 in 10 children under the age of 14 were subject to physical or psychological abuse. Among these countries, the rate of reported sexual abuse among children, especially young girls, is high, around 5% on average, and has decreased little in the past decade. Corruption and bribery are also prevalent in many nations, but especially those of low and middle income, which make it difficult for the average person to access necessary resources. Promoting the rule of law worldwide and at all levels to ensure access to justice will make reporting instances of these crimes easier, This goes hand in hand with developing effective, accountable, and transparent institutions and ensuring responsive, inclusive, participatory, and representative decision-making at international and national levels, encouraging the participation of developing countries in global governance and giving them more of a voice on the world stage will make it easier to fully address their specific issues. As of 2019, 40% of nations had human rights institutions focused on addressing problems in their country and on promoting human rights in compliance with the Paris Principles. But in at least 78 countries, there is still a lack of a national effort towards human rights. For the individual, perhaps two of the most fundamental steps that the UN hopes to accomplish by 2030 are to ensure legal identity for all persons so that they may be properly accounted for, and to mandate universal public access to information so that universal access to justice and social services may be more adequately carried out. In comparison with some of the other goals, more progress has been made in human rights and on SDG16, but much work is needed to achieve a truly sustainable, peaceful world by 2030.
What a lovely video, an interesting video. I think gets to the point with a lot of things. So, what do we think SDG 13 is? What do we think SDG 13 is? Is it peace, bro? Peace and love? Or peace, justice, and strong institutions? What do you think? What could it be? What is it? I think it's an obvious one for you there. It is, of course, the letter C. It is the letter C. Very good. The world cannot use its resources effectively if still exists. If what still exists? What do you think? You can write your answers in there. You can put it on the worksheet. You can put it in the chat box. Or you could just write it down in your own notebook alongside you, the same way I have. Who are more likely to be repeat offenders of violent crimes? Oh, it's inequality was the answer to the one before there. Inequality was the answer to the one before. Who are more likely to be repeat offenders of violent crime? What do you think? What could it be? What do you think? What could it be? There we go. Sorry, I saw a message there that got deleted immediately. People who had violent crimes done to them are more likely to be repeat offenders. I saw a written guy there with C there. Oh, my apologies. I've got real Fridays on today with my yawning. So the repeat offenders are people who have had violent crimes done to them. Or people who are sufferers of abuse tend to abuse. They don't tend to, but often abusers have been abused in the past. Where does the video claim corruption and bribery is most common? Low to middle income countries, they said. Low to middle income countries. Now, I don't believe that's 100% true. I think corruption and bribery shows itself in very many different ways, even in the richest countries. I think it's absolutely everywhere. And the UN wants to provide everybody with what? I'm going to leave that one with you. Just to make sure you watch the video again and you don't just listen on for the answers. Because I think that video was pretty good. It's a nice video where it has kind of a happy medium of the ideas. So, yeah. It's not too positive, but it's also not too negative, which is exactly what I needed. Now we're going to move on to what do you mean?
What do you mean? Oh, what do you mean?
What do you mean? Make up your mind. What do you mean? Anyway. So here are our two pictures. Here are our two pictures in another language. So the first one, what does this mean? ¿Cuántos más para la paz? ¿Cuántos más para la paz? ¿Cuántos más para la paz? The answer to that is how many more? How many more for peace? So in this case, this was a FARC, a rally against FARC in Colombia, and it was asking how many more people were going to die until there was peace. Well done, Ritik. Well done, Ritik. It was justice for all. I was trying to keep it a secret to make sure everybody watched back. It was indeed justice for all. Something that would be really nice, but I just feel like we seem to be stepping further away from that rather than closer. And this one here. So we've looked at all different languages. This one really jumped out on me today. This is American Sign Language. Does anybody know what that means? It was very relevant to the Black Lives Matter movement. Had a lot to do with George Floyd. This is American Sign Language for I can't breathe. And when you look at these movements like Black Lives Matter and people out there to make a difference with social justice, very good, Ritik. I've just noticed you got the previous one there, brilliant. I know that Ritik's studying Spanish. When you look at these campaigns to go out there and to make a difference, often triggered by a huge event like this, like with George Floyd, that was luckily captured on film, because had it not been, would there have been justice? That's my question. Would there have been justice? There absolutely wouldn't have been justice if somebody hadn't filmed that. If that hadn't been captured on camera, there would have been no justice at all. It would have just been swept under the carpet like so many others before them. And that's what makes me sad. But we need to keep moving. We need to keep striving for justice. Now, usually at this point, we move on to Ali's top tips. Now, every week I sit down with Ali, we have a nice chat, we discuss and we talk about what could be in your tips for Ali's top tips this week. And this week, when we're talking about peace, I wasn't in a super positive mood, and that may have reflected, but with the currently the war in the Ukraine at the moment, and so on and so forth. Yes, Ritik, it does say I can't breathe. Brilliant. With the war in the Ukraine and with things the way they are, and at the moment, as I mentioned before, with Vox here, with so much hate and vitriol coming out, she said, I can't at the moment. I can't think of anything that's going to make a positive difference. And so I said, let's not force it. Let's see if we can in future, and we'll release it in future. But right now, don't worry about it. So we won't force it upon anybody. So there isn't a final Ali's top tips for the series. It's only the second time ever she hasn't done them. But she will be back in series 3. And before we close off today's lesson, let's talk about series 3, which is going to be called Cultivating Changemakers. And it's going to be a really short series. There's only going to be 6 different lessons. And in each one, I'm going to focus on a different change maker. And I'm going to interview them. We're going to look into what they do and how they do it. And we're going to try and find a way of helping other teachers, of helping students step up and make a difference and become a change maker and learn from these incredible humans. So, and that'll be around in about October. Until then, please do stay in touch. I mean, coming soon will be the Creating a Greener Mindset course, who Ritik was a member of the first cohort. Do feel free to come along and join with that. As always, feel free to give us a follow on Instagram or Facebook. Subscribe here on YouTube. And of course, if you fancy donating, feel free to do so. It's been a really nice second series. It's been great. It's been fun. Ritik says due to slow network, it takes time to be sent. I completely understand, Ritik. Don't you worry. I know exactly what you mean. Thank you so much for everybody for joining us throughout this series for these 17 different lessons, including the Christmas one. It's been amazing, and a huge thanks to Ritik and his class who often come along to the lessons. We will be back very soon with a lot more. We'll also get in touch with us over Instagram, through social media and so on and so forth. It's been lovely. It's always going to be lovely, and I'll see you very soon for Series 3.